Hello and welcome to Adaptation, the ultimate vlog for film and book lovers. I'm Jessica Dunn, and this month, in honor of the immensely scary month of October, we're going to be theming all of our vlogs on horror. It's a weird word. Horror. Horror. But don't worry, this vlog shouldn't give you nightmares. Actually, I take that back. This one might. But only because this week's theme is worst adapted horror films. And I know I have nightmares about bad adaptations, so it seems appropriate. Let's start off with a classic. I mean, the novel, not really the film. Apparently, the 1992 version of Dracula was intensely awful. Wait, that's it? Apparently, viewers, we have disappointed you, because you're going to have to take Kendall's word that it really was as bad as she says. Along the same vein, the 2000 version of Dracula was equally terrible, if not worse. It had horrible acting, a terrible plot, and Dracula was actually Judas all along. Hollywood, please, can't we for once get a good Dracula adaptation? If only Bela Lugosi was actually immortal, he could show those modern actors a thing or two. We've mentioned this one before, but Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was actually a pretty terrible horror adaptation. Surprising, right? There were so many things in the films that were added unnecessarily that just didn't contribute to the plot. It just made it more horrific. And worst of all, they kill the main character in the book. Also, Jack Nicholson, however good an actor he actually is, just seemed too angry and insane right from the get-go. Whereas in the book, it's much more interesting psychologically because he seems from the outside to be a good husband and father, and then you witness his slow spiral into madness. He's also supposed to have a moment of clarity at the end where he sacrifices himself for the safety of his wife and son. But instead, they gave him an overly climactic ending where he freezes in a hedge maze. That makes complete sense. Good job, Stanley Kubrick. Staying alongside the remakes, the American version of The Ring was another really bad horror adaptation, mostly because they didn't seem to understand what the Japanese version was actually communicating. There were so many things about this that just raised more questions than there were answers. Plus, the seeming answer they gave for why Samara was the way she was just didn't make sense. Somehow, even though the Japanese version just said that she had supernatural powers and that was it, it seemed to make more sense in the solid sense of the story than the American version's overcomplicated. Why must you complicate things, Hollywood? That being said, it can still be a fun movie to watch, especially if you're one of those people who like to scare your friends in the middle of watching a scary movie. Guilty. Adding another remake to our horrible horrors list, the Rob Zombie Halloween version. They took a good, slightly campy 1.5 hour movie and stretched it out into a nearly 2.5 hour travesty. He added all of this Michael Myers backstory of him in the asylum that just did nothing for the film. It ruined the pacing and the fun of the original. And finally, we'll round out this list with one of my favorite thriller novels, and therefore one of my least favorite horror adaptations. I Know What You Did Last Summer. People may not agree with me on this, but this movie was an affront to all fans of Lois Duncan. First of all, the book was not a horror novel. It was a clever young adult thriller about 4 teens who were responsible for the death of a young boy in a hit and run, and who kept it quiet. So a year later, they each start receiving notes and threats from someone who knows about their guilt and starts preying on them. It's creepy. The movie, however, demoted this interesting plotline into a gore-fest horror film about a hooked fisherman who just starts stalking and killing these 4 teens. The characters in the book have personalities and things you like and dislike about them, whereas in the movie, they're just faces on the screen that are slowly being picked off. You know the only good thing about this movie? They're remaking it. Hollywood is getting another chance to do it right. Let's just hope they've learned from their past mistakes. However, I'm not getting my hopes up about that, considering the first movie made millions of dollars in theaters. So they're probably just gonna repeat it. There's just no accounting for taste. So I hope that this list of atrocities won't give you too many nights of insomnia. But if that is the case, may I suggest one of our wonderful podcasts as a way to calm down, not to fall asleep. Available for downloading on iTunes or for streaming on our website. Or a little bit of venting usually does the trick for me, so feel free to comment in the section below, especially if you disagree with any of our choices, or if you think we've left a couple off the list. Plus, links for our social media pages can all be found in the info section as well. As always, thanks for tuning into Adaptation. If there's anything that we've actually been able to pull from any of these awful versions, let's just remember, if you're running away from a monster, don't look back. And for Pete's sake, stand up if you've fallen. Go forth and survive.